and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. Hello there, beloved Ascension Pioneers, and welcome to this last video of this year. So it's the new moon. It's actually the last new moon of the year, which concluded and completed a 9-year cycle for so many of us. Well, for all of us, but there's some of us who felt this more as a completion than others. So definitely this is a strong pillar point for us, and I want to share in this video some of the aspects and resolutions for our mastery that I feel are truly important. So besides what I'm going to talk about as in this last presentation for all of us and what we went through, and specifically what this last culminating year represented to many of us, I'm going to talk about the main 13 points. So, 13 is a death number in tarot, but this is a death, rebirth, and transformation essence. So I've actually channeled 13 of these pinpoints for us that are not resolutions, because as you know, when we make resolutions, a lot of times they're mental. They're meant as self-mastery devotions and commitments to ever greater emphasis on the self. So as you know, and as you've been going through your own personal attunements, there was a lot of intensity, specifically in the last few years since the 2012 passageway. And this year almost felt like a return of that, which in 2012 a lot of us felt as that energy breaking point. And for a lot of us, this breaking point resonated a lot with the tower energy in essence. So, even the year was structured in 2016. 16 in tarot is the tower number, which means the disillusionment and the waking up. So basically it's a awakening card, an awakening message. So next year we enter into the 17 theme, besides being this 10 and 1 actually universal year. But what this means is that 17 is the star number in tarot, in major arcana. Sometimes it's known as that stellar frequency coming to the planet, to the planetary embodiment. A lot of times also seen as an archetype of the soulmate energy. And I also see it as that stellar descendant into moving into our bigger embodied soul self. And for me specifically, and I hope that for a lot of you as well, this year was focused a lot on soul mastery through soul embodiment. My main pivotal challenges of this year specifically had to deal with setting those healthy boundaries so that I could be myself as I am. And this wasn't just this year, but for me specifically, it was very much related to the whole 9-year cycle. As I've looked back, did my introspection, which is now very beautiful because we have the planet Mercury going retrograde until January 8th. So because this is my last video of the year, and when we see each other next, it will already be 2017. It's just a number, and yet it's not, because that's how things are in creation. These are waves and cycles through which we all travel through. So the thing is that there won't be an Ascension update, which I usually do every month, until after the 8th of January, and this is how it's guided. And specifically, I have to share that it's very important because we will have a strong gateway, a forward-moving energy, a forward momentum, because since that January 8th until February 6th, I think we will have all planets at the same time being in direct motion, which is always for us like this green light, or sometimes in some cultures it's supposed to be red light. And when you look at it, in the real nature, it's supposed to be red, because red is the action energy. So we will kind of be retrograding still, and we'll be doing our self-mastery deepening during this time. So during this time, I've been guided through Spirit to not share anything of that major importance, that actually it's more important for us to follow the alignments of the real New Year's and the celestial alignments plus the solar cycles, so that we know which essence for us is that new beginning. And as you know, there's always a new beginning on so many levels. First, you have your very own solar return. We each have our own birthday. When we were incarnated here in the planet, we begin our personal new year then. Then we have the new year, which is the solstice. For us in the northern hemisphere, that's this December 21st, which is when the sun starts to rise up again, which actually occurs through a few days of halt. And then on the Christmas day, the sun starts to elevate itself once more. So this is one new year for me that feels more resonant than the 31st and 1st of January then. But also what very much feels like this new year celestially, astrologically, is this new moon. And that's why I'm putting out this video on this Capricorn full moon, new moon, which every new moon, as you know, is a new beginning. But this time it's specifically for a lot of us, it's the sense that it's not just a new moon, but it's also completion. So it sets the foundation for both completion and resolution for the new. So you can feel that in your own way when you're gonna tap into what you're receiving. If you're guided to do any work of divination, any sorts of practice that you do, it's always for you. And a lot of times people perceive things as we're doing them for others. But in truth, there's a fine line between really knowing how are we serving the self, but first through the service that we have as an inner mastery dedication to the self. Okay, so as you know, if you've been following kind of what I've been sharing during these years, it hasn't been 9 years, but it was straightforward, on and on, always ongoing since 2011 for me, my work within Ascension Pioneers. And specifically, I've always been guiding you to that master within you, to be present with that master. And recently I came across again, just as the year was turning to its closure, that in truth, you know, people still also send me questions and they ask me all kinds of stuff and they want to share information with me that concerns only them. Sometimes they even spam me via my email, but you know, that's another story. I want to say that when you become one with your master self, when you start walking that path, you become so humble by this presence of knowing and not knowing at the same time, which means that you know that as a master self, you have no answers for other people. And like the great Osho already said, he was the one who said, when they asked him, so how do we actually answer the questions when people approach you? And he said, well, in truth, no one asks questions to a master. And then he gave this example with Rumi. You know, we all know Rumi, right? The great divine lover, the inspiration for so many of us. And he had his pupils, his students, and they had to go somewhere. I don't know, where they're walking across the desert, something. And someone came across and said, wait a minute, he was alone. He said, where are your students? And he said, you know what? They started asking me questions. And I wanted to show them, look, you do this on your own. You do this yourself. So go and find your own path. Become that, which I am. So that was always my main message for all of us, that the most deepest essence that we have within, and I always say that love in its highest aspect is truth, because love has many different levels that we can attune to as human beings. And in terms of how evolved we are in our scale of the soul evolution, we will feel that love on these levels. And specifically for me, love is the devotion to this divine service. But to be of service and to be a servant is not the same thing. So many of you had to go through many initiations that were about establishing these boundaries, because when volunteer souls, which is the people I talk to and I address most regularly in my messages, we come from a space of when a lot of us hold this group consciousness, this group soul consciousness, but it's always based on purity and unity of divine love. But when we enter these human bodies, it's not always the case. So we meet people who don't always have the same respect. They don't always feel love in the same way. So we have to also learn to have those boundaries established, because we have to first take care of our own self so we can be a greater structure, greater embodiment through the whole. And that's what I perceive as divine service. So you're not serving others or another through a depletion of your own self, but you become so full of life, of your own life force, that you can overflow. You can spill, you know, through that which seems as it has a border. And then only then, when these boundaries are established in a healthy way, you actually become which is a paradox again, an embodiment of that boundless, of borderless essence of embodiment. So I've written down 13 main things, which I've addressed in so many of my videos. But if you're new, or if you want to have a recap of this whole year, or you feel like in this video you're going through this with me as a together kind of spirit of brotherhood, sisterhood that we all are, and you feel I've created a sacred space which you feel you kind of wish to be a part of, then you can participate when I'm going to go through these things. I was writing them. We have these beautiful sunny days now all the time. We have no snow, no sign of snow this year in the Alps, but there was beautiful sunny weather all this time, and I was sitting on top of my hill and writing these points down, which I wanted to make them short, compiled of that which truly is the true essence of what many of us had to master during those 9 years. And when I meet those of you who belong to this path at this time, you know, you always will be ready, because readiness means that things come to you naturally. Things have to be effortless and in flow, which means that if there's anything I try to present to you and it's going to be forced, you know, someone comes to me and I try to, you know, bring certain truths to them, which I can't, because the truth is the only essence which you can only have your own inner relating. It's not even a relationship, but your own reverence to. Love you can share, you know, and the essence of love you can share. The truth is that, in a way, vertical alignment, which only you get to experience through your source, connecting to a bigger source of all life and creation. So for me, I always have been, in a way, source creationists. I have not seen divinity as only source, but because source is not separate from all that it creates, all the waves of endless beauty of this vast creation that is all of us together in complete wholeness. So for me, divine service is when you come into your wholeness in such a way, and then you become a magnet, you become this charismatic being that people kind of migrate towards. But why is it so important to establish healthy boundaries is because now I tend to see there's a lot of people still lacking that. They're still searching, they're depleted, they're sometimes mentally challenged in that direction. They can use the new age as a means of escapism, and they're trying to find answers, and everything to them becomes this mental story. And it's not truly what enlightenment is. And yet there's still a lot of people who are in that space. And yet even that is an experience that is perfect for them and where they are. So when you come into your complete essence of mastery, you will no longer feel obliged to serve others in a way that you're helping what perhaps does not need to be helped. It only wants to drink of your energy, wants to drink of your fountain. I always say that. I say, don't do that. Don't come to the master and say, I'm here for you, master. You always have to be there for you. When people seek a master, they end up a lot of times receiving a guru, which is an old energy, and it was sought out so much at large during the ages of this transition era. But now we have to become those steady masters. And I always was sharing my messages within the clarity I received, and it always came through my I am presence, which is what I call the spirit. And it was, in a way, coming through the source of the purity that I embody myself. But it cannot be something that someone will get through me. They can get an inspiration. They can get that assistance. But a lot of times I still witness that people only wish to be heard, and they only wish to share something of their own because they still have not yet found the peaceful resolution to be with their master, to embrace their master. And when sometimes people approach me in that way, I know that in truth I cannot help them because they're not ready to work with me on the level of mastery. They only want to be seen and recognized or validated or get certain answers. But as a master said, answers only bring, seeking answers only brings more questions. For me, it's not about seeking those answers. It's about choices. It's about always making choices. And when you make a choice naturally, organically, spontaneously, the answer, which is not even an answer that is, answered through a thought, is just an experience. It's like you're in the experience of it and you know you've walked through it. And you know that the experience itself is your answer. This is when you know that you're living the integrated mastery of your presence. So this was my main theme throughout these years. The messages have been amplifying as I have been witnessing more and more of my growth. But this last video is in a way also meant to be seen as a reverence, as a gratitude for all of us who've been doing and walking these steps of light in spite of being put out up front so much and seen that also sometimes, you know, as moths come to a flame, people who are still very confused come to us. And knowing that we can't simply be there for everyone, because a very profound dream, a very prophetic dream years ago showed me this, that I can only be here for those that are ready in the way through mastery. The rest, we already are part of a vast existence which loves everything and everyone. So when people come to you and they want compassion from you, they want that validation, they want that respect, but they're not yet giving that to themselves and they expect it from you, they're usually not going to get it. We usually don't get the things we expect. But when it's a natural experience, when it's a natural occurrence, then it's real, because you don't seek it. It comes to you. It comes to you invited through the graceful presence. And many things I've been sharing throughout the years, especially this year, they were, you know, the messages were getting stronger and more deepened into the path of mastery. People sometimes misperceive me. They sometimes perceive me in a false way, because when I look at myself, I am the embodiment of what I represent, and this is the white ray and the unity consciousness, but it's just me, and it has to be done in an authentic way, and I can only be who I am and be my own sovereign. But a lot of times I witness people still come and they have their own visions of you, they have their own, you know, they mold you in this way and they kind of perceive you in a certain way. And they kind of expect you to act a certain way. And when that is not so, when that is not reciprocated in that way, then they're offended. And a lot of times people that way have perceived me as blunt, but I'm not blunt. I'm very loving, but I'm loving in a truthful way. I'm very truthful. So that is always my main essence. So for me, why that is so important is to show you that you can be all of that the same way, but in your own authentic way. You know, you can embody the purity. You can embody that ultimate devotion to truth. A lot of times people told me I represent that to them. And I said, well, where are you seeking it? And they said, well, there's no one there where I live, or there's no one there for me to do it with. And I'm like, who are you waiting for? I don't need anyone. I never waited for anyone to start doing what I was, you know, guided to do. You can start any moment as your new year, as your new mastery, dedication, and devotion. It's not dependent on external conditions. And that was my main message, because a true sovereign, a true master of their own creation and of divine love knows that in the end, everything has to be returned back to the self. So my messages were deepening in this way, and I really hope they brought you to a deepened state of your awareness, which is not just to have that vertical alignment and the recognition of you as the self, which is the spirit self, but to also know that creation has many forms. So as we have spirit, we have soul, and we have the body. These are the main three levels. And I've been sharing a lot about that, how to integrate all of that in your being, not to see yourself as just spirit, to also value creation in your body, your physical temple. And all of my messages were more and more dedicated to the life force and the embodiment of that life force, and how you can spiritualize your life force so that it can be more potent in your body, so you can create more and create with more love. Because recently, a friend of mine, she said to me, she stood on the stage and people said, well, you know, what does this world need? And she said, love. And people were like, oh, you know, and I get it. People are in a way, they're fed up by always, you know, being told, oh, the world needs more love, blah, blah, you know. But so many beings do not embody that. We're just saying it. So people get fed up by this cliche of saying, well, the world just needs more love and everything will be fine. Because in truth, humanity at its core source has forgotten what love is. So when I'm loving, for example, through truthful approach, which is just being me, expressing my dharmic existence, which cannot be any other way but mine. So if someone else sees it a certain way, you know, and sometimes you get critics and people say, you are not this way, you should be more like this, you know, and that's just their perception of you. But source never makes mistakes. No one of us is mistakenly a certain way. We're all as we are. Because no one needs two me, you know, two Polonas in this world, or two of yous. There's, everything is planned to the very detail in its originality. But I'm not talking about the identity of the persona. I'm talking about the originality of your spirit that's descending into our form, which is soul embodiment. So as that occurs more and more, there will naturally be a sense of more authenticity. And this was happening for many people. But those who weren't yet feeling and experiencing that, a lot of them were pushing this away, and they went more into the extreme of seeking outside of themselves, which a lot of times caused a lot of mental confusion, fanatic expressions, worship, all those things that actually just take us even further away from our own intimate source. So for me, my biggest source connection was always through nature. I just had this beautiful moment this week when I passed through this waterfall. There's many waterfall we have here by the bridge as we go to the top of this hill. And there was a butterfly coming, and that's only because we have no snow. So there's butterflies in December, which is very rare. They're very seldom, but I saw one, and it sat down right there in front of the waterfall. It almost like lured me into the experience, and I started, being a little shaky when I saw the butterfly. These are my messengers. Me as an elven spirit, I connect a lot through that butterfly animal spirit. And I just stood there, and the water made these sounds, and I was listening to one of my favorite classical songs, which is The Swan. It's called The Swan. And the water was bouncing off just as the music was playing in that harmonious way, and it was so graceful, so peaceful, so beautiful. And these are these sacred moments when you're in this reverence of all life in creation, and you feel this immense beauty of existence. But people go like, why can't you be and experience this all the times, in all ways? And the answer here would be that those of us who come here to serve, those who are less aware of who they truly are and what's happening in the large scheme of things, we still have to be in the world. If we were completely withdrawn from the world, we'd just be sitting on top of the mountains or somewhere in a cave. But we're in those experiences. So when we're in it, we sometimes feel the pain of the world. We don't make it our own. When we're developed enough in our mastery, we don't do that. We don't need to do that. But we still feel and experience the world. So we are not always in that highest of the high moment. But when we are, we're always instantly reminded of what's that true importance. So I want to make this my main message of this year, which is not just completing this year, but 9 years altogether. So if we still have any kind of burdens in our lungs and our shoulders and our hips and our legs, wherever we still might feel tensions and our bodies is popping up with the symptoms because there's so much cosmic activity now happening, and it's pulling all of that away. And for a lot of you, which I address as angelic humans, me being one of the groups, and the thing is, there's these points, right, where, when we draw angels and we draw wings, it's actually there's certain points in the body that locate where your ethereal, which I call wings, which is basically your celestial body form, kind of starts to move through. It starts to bleed through into your physical body. And these points, when our physical body is a certain way and a certain density, and then this higher, more ethereal form kind of wants to be kind of like brought through us in our physicality, sometimes it has to go through these denser points, and it has to activate certain points. And this is a part of the physical ascension path. And we will feel those symptoms. So I have been having those, this part where these wings kind of clip on. It's basically a bad metaphor, how to put it. In plainest terms, it's how I can put it. So whatever you're still feeling, and it's now very much being triggered, and after the solstice point, this was very much enhanced. You can rest assured that the body knows its way, and you can seek out professionals that work in the fields of body work, to kind of have an easier flow through this experience. But in a way, your body still knows best, and it has a process of its own sometimes. So this year, we're actually completing such a big pile of energy mastery that the body has gone through a lot, not just through this year. A lot of you are feeling tired. I see people online sharing how they're depressed. A lot of this is happening because many people in the world at large, when they wanted to help others, but they themselves were not yet embracing all of their feelings. They didn't do their emotional clearing and mastery. They wanted to help the world before they actually started helping themselves. These people, because they numbed down a lot of their own feelings and they didn't take care of themselves and tend to the self enough, they're now starting to feel this numbness, which kind of is the suppression, which leads to depression. And I've witnessed now a lot of these people sharing the social media, and because of that, it was almost like this feeling of guilt present, like, oh, forgive me, but now I need to focus on myself. Oh, forgive me. Why is there still this separateness from the self and others? Because you are, just as much as you are you in this body, you are a part of the whole. And when you heal and tend to yourself, you help the whole to heal, because you're a fragment in that whole. And for you to deal with your own fragmentation and bring it into unification, you are doing such an important work. And that healing, in truth, when you're trying to save and fix others and the world, which really isn't your job in the first place, from a mastery perspective, from a master soul perspective, then eventually the body will give you the signals and messages of what now really needs your attention. So a lot of the people are feeling that now. And like I've shared before, a lot of disappointment and regret and why things didn't go in a certain way. But we still lack that perspective of the bigger picture, and not a lot of humans in this world can see multiple timelines, together with the synthesized timeline that is chosen for a particular experience as the whole and what the whole chooses. So we've had this with the elections that were one of the biggest archetypal representations of that this year in the United States, when people thought it was about choosing a certain person. But what I was shown is that people were basically on the collective levels, we were choosing whether we're going to go pro-war or against war. And a lot of the times, from a greater galactic perspective, what will be chosen, as we perceive it as, well, let's choose the lesser of two evils, right? But from a bigger perspective, from a benevolent, loving, all-loving perspective, what is chosen is that which is more benevolent, which would be, like I said, the lesser of the two evils. Well, that's the term people are using nowadays, but this is what it means. So when we tend to look at things from up close and too personally, we lose we lose momentum, we lose perspective, which means that we have to return back to trusting that what is chosen on a bigger level is a timeline that is leading to the right direction. Sometimes it's, if there's problems here and there, what will be chosen is where there's less problems to actually deal with, so that a bigger, more chaotic version would not be chosen. So what we were really choosing on a bigger scale was whether we would choose war or pro-war or against war kind of mentality. And people were showing their, sick of that. So what we're being fed through on the outside is not always what is happening on the inner planes, and what is happening is a choice of the individuals and the collective of one humanity. So you, as a sovereign being, you have to learn how to tune into that, to tune into the greater, bigger perspective, because that is the only thing that will keep you sane in this transitional, changing world, where things often are very chaotic. And you, as a steady pillar of peace, of love, of wisdom, of power, of that truth, you have to see with the eyes of clarity. And that's why I'm sharing these things for mastery, is for you to be there. Because if you're watching my videos and you're finding resonance with my sharings, you're probably on this pathway because that's what your heart is pulling you towards, more than the things that are not really so important for you in your path. So the dealings of other people are not necessarily the dealings that you're choosing in this life. And that's where you're always being drawn to the things that matter most to you. Okay, like I am choosing what I am choosing through my service. So I want to read you first something and then read you my points. We're going to go through them together. I will read them so I don't forget anything. This is channeled from my own spirit, but I do want to still read it out so that I don't forget. So it's not kind of like read somewhere from a book. But I really want to share this. I really love these cards, Transformational Tarot. It's Osha's Transformation Tarot. And there's this beautiful story here about the ultimate accident. This is the card. And what it talks about is, I call it the breaking point, that, there's people who seek the truth, or the ultimate, or the source of all, divinity, through themselves, or they want to have that profound mystical experience, or they're the devotee to the light, or whatever you call it, or they're seeking the truth, they're wanting enlightenment. For me, I always see it like you have to choose it, no excuses, because when you choose it, it chooses you. It's not like, oh, I would choose it, but I still have this and this and that. Well, then you're not ready. When you're ready, you're choosing it with all of your heart, unconditionally, which means not bound to the result. Like, oh, I'm pursuing enlightenment, I'm pursuing mastery, so why am I not feeling it? Why am I not experiencing it? It has to be unconditional. Because what we're doing is we're not clearing away that of the self, because what can you clear away if you already, as the sovereign individual that you are, created through your own sovereign self, your source self, your original design of your divinity, you are already perfect that way. But what we're doing is we were unburdening all the perceptions and beliefs of what that is not. So we weren't actually clearing away the debris. That was the perception a lot of times of the New Age movement, that we have to purify in a way to get better, to better our humanity. In a way, we were seeking that diamond that already is there inside. So we were creating, with every devotional act, we were creating that sacred space. And at a certain point, there's a breaking point when there is readiness from us on all levels. And after this video, I will also share with you, when I'm ready, when it's ready, a video on the white ray, and a deeper clarification of what this is for those of you who feel you are called to that path, you are working, and you want to have that complete purity, and you believe that as a being, as a human, you can't experience it, because people say, well, humans are just distorted, humans are dead, blah, blah. Well, again, that means you're not ready. But when you are completely devoted to that, it comes to you because you have created enough sacredness, enough reverence, not just a mental belief, but a knowing that that is truth. So the breaking point, and here it's called the ultimate accident, and I will read it to you, and then we're going to read through my points and then hopefully complete the video in our brand new New Year celebratory mode. Okay, so it's called the ultimate accident, and you can see the picture here so you can know what the story will be about. It's called Chiyono and Her Bucket of Water. It is not a certain sequence of causes that brings enlightenment. Your search, your intense longing, your readiness to do anything, all together perhaps, they create a certain aroma around you in which that great accident becomes possible. The nun Chiyono studied for years but was unable to find enlightenment. One night she was carrying an old pail filled with water. As she was walking along, she was watching the full moon reflected in the pail of water. Suddenly the bamboo strips that held the pail together broke, and the pail fell apart. The water rushed out, the moon's reflection disappeared, and Chiyono became enlightened. She wrote this verse: "This way and that way I tried to keep the pail together, hoping the weak bamboo would never break. Suddenly the bottom fell out. No more water, no more moon in the water, emptiness in my hand." Beautiful. Enlightenment is always like an accident because it is unpredictable, because you cannot manage it, you cannot cause it to happen. But don't misunderstand me, because when I say enlightenment is just like an accident, I'm not saying don't do anything for it. The accident happens only to those who have been doing much for it, but it never happens because of their doing. The doing is just a cause which creates the situation in them, so they become accident prone, that's all. That is the meaning of this beautiful happening. I must tell you something about Chiyono. She was a very beautiful woman when she was young. Even the emperor and the princes were after her. She refused because she wanted to be a lover only to the divine. She went from one monastery to another to become a nun, but even great masters refused. There were so many monks, and she was so beautiful that they would forget God and everything, so everywhere the door was closed. So what did Chiyono do? Finding no other way, she burned her face, scarred her whole life. And then she went to a master. He couldn't even recognize whether she was a woman or a man. Then she was accepted as a nun. She studied, meditated for 30-40 years continuously. Then suddenly one night she was looking at the moon reflected in the pail. Suddenly the pail fell down, the water rushed out, and the moon disappeared, and that became the trigger point, the breaking point. There is always a trigger point for where the old disappears and the new starts, from where you are reborn. That became the trigger point. Suddenly, the water rushed out and there was no moon. So she must have looked up and the real moon was there. Suddenly, she became awakened to this fact that everything was a reflection, an illusion, because it was seen through the mind. As the pail broke, the mind inside also broke. It was ready. All that could be done had been done. All that could be possible, she had done it. Nothing was left. She was ready. She had earned it. This ordinary incident became a trigger point. Suddenly the bottom fell out. It was an accident. No more water, no more moon in the water, emptiness in my hand. Beautiful. And this is enlightenment, when emptiness is in your hand, when everything is empty, when there is nobody, not even you. You have attained to the original phase of Zen. So when I had my breaking point, and there's not just one, but there's one pivotal one. And for me, when I saw the butterfly, when I saw the water, bouncing in a certain way, creating harmony with the music I was listening to, and then the water I was hearing, all in this harmonious flow, in those moments, you're no longer just the observer or just the identity. You are all of it. And it's hard to explain in it because it's so profound. It moves you, it touches your human self. And when the human self is touched, it starts to merge more with the divine, and the divine can enter more as that lover in your form. And in those moments, there's such clarity. You know that there's nothing outside of you that really makes you who you are, and that there's no demands of the external world or other people and expectations and whatever it is that you can fulfill. Only this moment being you, that's enough. So when I had my moment this week, I was just crying out of being moved and happiness. And after that, I actually wrote these few notes. So if you don't mind, these are actually 2017 self-mastery devotions. That's what I call them. They're not resolutions because, as you know how it is, when humans make resolutions, a lot of time they make them from a space of the mind. I've seen this many times when people say, I'm going to have this challenge, I'm going to fast, I'm going to not do this, I'm going to eat this way, I'm going to clothe this way, whatever. It's fixed. It's not organic. So a lot of times we break those things, and people say, well, the challenge didn't work fully because I didn't fully, didn't fully go through that. I didn't fully, check that out. It's like, oops, I check out on all those points. It's because the approach is mental. When there is allowance, when we simply allow ourselves to be in any moment, just be with it, go for it, is the master self has no limitations. If there's something you feel it's not for you, but you're not feeling you're depriving yourself from it, then it's good, it's an alignment. But don't do things in the way of not doing them because it's structured and it's a challenge. You have to do it this way. It's mental. You have to allow the divine to work through you. And that means first receiving and allowing all that you perceive as wrong with you, all that you shouldn't be doing, and those wrongdoings. In truth, there's no mistakes. And when we really grow into our mastery, we know that there's nothing more we can do. Everything's been done. Everything's been prepared. Now we just live our lives through the lens of mastery. Non-expectation, humility, compassion. But first for the self, because as I've shared with you, a lot of times we feel respect, compassion, all of that has to come through another. And when it doesn't, we're disappointed. We're always going to be disappointed this way because at first the garden of the self needs to be tended to within. And then you will see ripples out, or you won't. But either way, you will be neutral about it. You won't have offense. So when someone perceives me a certain way, I'm not offended. Or when someone tells me, you're not like this, or you're supposed to be like this, I'm like, it's okay. That's their perception of me. It doesn't bother me. In the past, when I wasn't yet living through the truth of my mastery, it still could bother me. It could trigger me. But the trigger points were showing me where I'm still developing the boundaries and the boundless spirit and emerge. And that's a paradox in truth. To be within boundaries and yet to have no boundaries. It's not, again, an easy thing, but it comes through that enlightenment which we've just read about. It's just that knowing that it's so simple. And everything that we've been piling up and felt like we have to achieve it, or we're kind of climbing towards it, we're climbing on the top, we're like, no, we're just walking, we're just journeying, we're a wave, we're a source wave that's just in motion, and it's set itself into this motion. It's always us. Every happening, every directive, it's always from us. We still sometimes perceive, well, that was an experience, I didn't want it, why did it happen, it was a mistake. Not really. There are no mistakes in creation. There's just perceptions of mistakes. But the mistake usually is a blessing that when you go through it, once you're in the side of the integration self, you're like, oh, that's why it wasn't a mistake. Not really. It was chosen by me through me. And those are the things I always want to get across as messages to all of you, because although people talk about mastery and they talk about initiation, they talk about love, they still fail at those crucial points which is when something happens they don't perceive as from the self, which is still separation and duality. They're like, that must not be from me, but it is. Okay, so the wave needs to travel. It needs to travel through freedom, and the freedom is of the allowing of the life to be what it is, what's meant to come out, what's meant to be birthed through us without any sorts of control. So now let's read those 13 points, which means death and rebirth, which is perfect for this end and beginning of the year, which is how I'm feeling this new one. It's not just the last one of this old year, but I feel because we've already had our New Year's in solstice and a solar new year within the solar logos archetypes. We've already now experienced, and it's also the first in that way. So it's both. Okay. So is the glass half empty or half full? Who knows? Okay, so let's go to these devotions. First thing first, number one. A lot of you have been the caretakers, the givers, tending to everyone else's needs. And for a master of the self, it is important that we no more engage in mothering, caretaking of anyone and anything, because it's reached its culmination point now. And there's a difference between being of service and being a servant. And by mothering, we're not allowing that which is also an essence of the divine trinity, which is always source, its creation, and the experience of that creation, or you can call it mother, father, child. It's the same thing. It has to be its own maturity through experience. We don't have to prevent it by mothering, by always being there for everyone in the way that sometimes it prevents them to have their own experience, because in truth we integrate only through experience. That's how souls evolve in their evolutionary cycles. Second, no more fake and false self-perfectionism and expectations. For the master self, the politeness and the kindness that is forced because you want to please, and that's a form of perfectionism, comes from the inauthentic self. So pleasing others, we only have to be genuine and authentic in truth. We don't need that. Number three, no more projecting our own needs of our union, which is the beloved within, the cosmic beloved is how I call it, unto others, and seeking it outside of us. A master needs to live their own beloved within first. And sometimes that comes at the expense of rather choosing to be alone, and it's not really to be lonely, but to be alone with the self, before you go and enter into relationships that are not from that space, because then there will still be expectations and projections and false compassion, which really isn't true compassion. You have to have yourself first, and that compassion sometimes will mean when there's no one to meet you on the level where you have met yourself, sometimes it's, as a master self perspective, it's better to choose to be alone than with the people who lack integrity, for example, and who lack that sustenance, which is mutual reciprocity for the flow of both. 4, we have to start as master selves focusing on the self-mastery always first. So any kind of perspective, whatever situation, it can be a tiniest event, but always looking at it through the looking glass of the master self, which includes the self-care and soul embodiment. So how is this reflecting the incoming of my soul instead of projecting it outwardly? Invitation of the soul into the body, so that we can be of the highest service to the whole. And I've spoken about this before, that to be an integrated self, whole self, is the biggest service you can offer to the world, because that, you know, like these dots in this dress, right? There's like these little fragments, but together they make one whole. So that kind of thing. And when one whole is whole into itself, there's a bigger capacity for the whole to, you know, vibrate that way. 5, Spirit recently shared with me this important message. No spiritual or dogmatic belief is worth not living in love. And especially during these times when we have different holidays and people would say, that's this and that's Christianity, that's New Age, or this is this and that. I'm going to give you my own example. I had this beautiful, peaceful moment when we went to Salzburg for a day for Christmas holidays. It was just a one-day trip, but I was guided to go into the main cathedral, into the church, which is very huge. And I'm not religious or anything, but I was drawn to go there because it's beautiful, and I wanted to see the art in it, and I wanted to just be in it and to rever myself, you know, to be in that space of reverence. So when I was in it, I had one of my most profound, peaceful moments in there. And if someone came towards that from a space of judgment, people could go like, "Oh, don't you talk about mastery? Why you went into church? Are you religious, Pona?" And people always do that. They're like, blah, 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 blah. The mind questions, judges, anticipates, assumes, it's all feeding this ease, which is not being at ease with the experience, which is the truth for us. And only I know I was guided to go there, only between me and my spirit. See, that's the truth. It's between you and spirit. And no one knows. And oftentimes we will have those beliefs, projecting them onto others and the world at large, simply because we don't accept that the truth is only known to those who live it within, and why we're doing it. So no spiritual belief. That's like this. You see something, well, that must be New Age. Well, perhaps it is, perhaps it's not. You're not the judge of it. The energy in itself speaks, and it knows. All the facts are known. You don't have to be the judge for anything outside of you. You're your own judge. And even that is up to your higher essence of divinity when you allow it. So feeding division, duality, separation, it has to end. Within you, who are the new embodiments of this mastery, you are the first frontiers for doing that. So one example would also be vegan, non-vegan, spiritual, not religious, all these things. You might have people going to church who are very heart-centered. You might also have people in the New Age who talk about life, but they're not life is light, but they're not heart-centered yet. So, and vice versa. So what does it matter? Each aspect is where it is. We're not the judge of anything outside of us. So when people approach me from that way, which is, you're a certain way, Pavona, you're like this, or like da-da-da, I'm like, they're not the judge of me. They're not an experience of me. So I don't respond to that because it's not coming from love. It's not coming from truth. Love is the truth in its highest form. And I don't respond to those critics. I don't respond to that because it's just the opinions, and opinions always belong to the world of ego. They don't belong to unity consciousness. And when I have, in another example, people approaching with respect and love, it's felt, and it's the soft energy coalescing, and it's kind of like undulating, and it's beautiful. So the highest form of anything is living through our inner source of unity consciousness, the I amness. We are creationists, just as we are of source. To live, to love, and create within that love of all is purity and beauty of our true self. Number 6, the breaking moment of enlightenment. We've been reading from this booklet, the story and example. But know that for you, it can be anything, and perhaps it's not just one thing. Perhaps there's many breaking points, and you will know when it's culminated. And for a lot of you in this 9 year, it has culminated in a way. This was my example I gave you only through the butterfly and the waterfall and the music and everything being complete, perfect alignment. And when the moment moves you so much that you are in this pure reverence and humility, knowing yourself as small and infinitely vast at the same time. I can't explain it. If you want to put it in words, it's already not an enlightened experience. But why a lot of times we're not always feeling it is because we're here to act as bridges, and we have to feel also the feelings of those who are still feeling them, that we can assist. And that's why it's not always the case of constant for the Ascension Pioneers and the volunteer souls, because we sometimes have chosen to go in the densest of energy forms to transmute them through love and understanding. So what is true and organic of the self comes effortless and naturally. And this is from Moji. Moji said that just recently. This is my next point. This is a beautiful example. Number 7 is no true master goes into the forms of comparison and copying and being inauthentic. We're all unique. And I've had this happen through others for me many times when I clearly saw that people are copying, and it was just someone took my name, took what I was doing this almost the same way, and I knew these people. I was like, what the heck, what is this? Hey, what are you doing? Just be yourself. And it's also something I wish to share here, is because if you've seen my videos and you've been continuously watching them, you've always seen me, if I took something as I heard somewhere else, like here and there, and I quote someone else, I always tell you the source of where it comes from. Why is this so important for a master soul? Because you, as a sovereign master, you always have to channel yourself, your I amness, okay? So when you engage with others who also are living their I amness and you're infatuated and you like it and you take something, you have to in a way turn the energy back to that source. Why? Because all we're all one in earth bodies. And I don't really believe in this copyrights, plagiarism, blah, 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 but I do believe it as an inner space of integrity, okay? Not as an, okay, we're going to stamp this, I'm going to make it mine, copyrights. That doesn't necessarily solve anything. It has to become a state of consciousness first, okay? So if anyone shares, for example, my messages or someone else's messages, right, through their own filter, they already distort it because they become falsehood. It's no longer authentic because it comes from their mouth. They're already filtering that because it's not something they're directly channeling from their I amness. So if I share anything that belongs to anyone or anything else, the words and the tongue of another, I always give you the source. I kind of have to respect that source and its sovereignty. So I always gave you, okay, I heard that here. This master spoke of that being shared this. I always reference that because I really feel importance of that so strongly. And if I share that way, people can see if they resonate with something there, and they see if the live stream of that is guiding them that way. Okay, so I always try to share, I know because I can't share it in exact words as someone else did. That's why I reference them, because otherwise it'd be kind of, saying they said this, but I said it in a different way, So that's what I mean, and it's important. It goes along with our masterful integrity because masters also honor other masters. We honor the mastery in everything and everyone. We don't copyright. We don't repeat. We don't try to be someone else. We don't try to belong in that way. We don't compare ourselves with anyone else because we understand our value of uniqueness and contribution of that existence self of us. So if I mention someone briefly and I reference them, I always say who it's from so that people can see if they're guided to have their own look and feel into that energy. Because you never say what someone else is saying or sharing through your own words and opinions. Because in truth, it's not of that truth. And you're totally disregarding and disrespecting that being whenever they are and whatever you think of them. And opinions are of ego. I've already shared that before. So if you're having your own words or videos or whatever, and people sometimes, I was even giving messages by others that they're using my exact words. I'm like, I don't care, I really don't that way because they're just people who are doing that. They're just not honoring their own self. So how can you then honor another if you're not yourself? But I honor all life so much that I have to bring it to the source of that origin. It's how it is. But everything that's mine, that's written through me, it's mine. It came through my words. It came through my own reflections of hours and hours of being within my own mastery, of sitting with my master self, of being in that presence, because that's what I devote to all the time. So sometimes if you feel you're benefiting from what I share, please don't share it with your words, with someone else. Please always return back to that source. And also that way you give others the opportunity to, to be directed to, for example, maybe I have something to offer to them. You never know if you don't share it in that way. The resonance has to be, again, naturally found, naturally directed to that source. That's masters honor other masters, and the master in all and everyone. 8. Okay, there are no answers to questions directly. So a true master never answers anyone's questions. That doesn't mean that they're not knowledgeable. So this also means that a master guides and points to the way. It is not their job to create followers, and I call this the guru syndrome, okay? Not every guru is in that sense a guru, but a lot of them were and are. So a master truly needs to create the conditions within the sacred space to create more masters, to help generate more masters of the self, which are complete sovereign individuals, not bound to persona complex, which is the little I, the little me, but sovereign I am masters of the self. That's important. Number 9, the eternal truth remains regardless of the external conditions and stories. This is what we were always returning to, that eternal spark. in the infinity and vastness of all creation. So in order to seek and live it, we must release the stories. And I've always talked about you, of the archetype of the stories, the archetypes, the essences, and the core of the truth. And to always move deeper, because with each level of your mastery, you're always going to go deeper. Just how it is in creation. You're always going to continue to refine that essence when it goes out and moves into different life forms and experiences. Okay, so one of the examples that I've recently heard about this was Moji's example of why sometimes we're trying to uncreate things of the past and past lives, and that's actually a job that doesn't, it can't exist. It's like it's like you set yourself to an instant fall because there's no meaning in that. It's like trying to create the impossible. The only moment as we know it is now, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, in the now, everything already is, and it can be altered and shifted in every minute existence part of you. You're always shifting. The cell, wow, different. Ooh, different now. Every time, every part of existence is always experiencing itself in the now. Otherwise, you're not really experiencing yourself. You're having a thought or a belief about yourself, but you're not truly experiencing yourself. Only in the now, present moment, you truly are experiencing yourself and creation. So in any moment, you can be created anew, in any second, in any split moment, in an altered state of mind, altered state of consciousness. It's all in consciousness, and that's that effortless being. Number 10, enlightenment is not a pursuit. That's the creating of the sacred space that we're, in a way, pursuing. But enlightenment itself is what we talked about, this breaking point. And when it's ripe, it's almost like an apple when it falls from the tree. It falls when it's ready. It's just, we can say, okay, apple fall, okay. Just like we get these fake supermarket kind of fruits that are not even ripe yet because they prematurely pick them so they could actually develop during the whole transport process. And we get them half green when you put them, inside, and they're kind of like ripening a bit, but then they already get like also a little rotten because it wasn't their natural cycle. So it has to come through a natural cycle of soul evolution. And we simply need to continue to make and create the conditions for it to have the faith in divine order and our human self, that in this process is not in charge. It has no control over our enlightenment. It should come unconditionally and without any expectations. Otherwise, a feeling is created of effort and strife and hardship. And the moment when we realize the timeless nature of everything, that all the conditions already exist, we surrender through allowing. And that allowance, that allowing life to be what it is and to become what is meant to be, is this greatest reverence for the beauty and purity of who we truly are in our core self. So 11, point 11. Ooh, that in a way is 11. It's a 2 and yet it's an 11. So it's bringing the embodiment. So it's about the physical embodiment of our ascended light. It's different and much easier for us to only have what I talk about, the vertical enlightenment, and to hold that state of blissful enlightenment when alone or in perfect conditions or just in your own bubble or outside of the norm, up on a mountain hill, somewhere in the cave, when we are here as the new masters, the masters of the new dawn. And we live in this world. We live not as the world itself, like we are associating ourselves with it, but we're still a part of it. So we live and love in the new terms in all circumstances, not just, when it feels easy and beautiful and blissful. Sometimes even when you go to a shopping mall, it feels dense, but you still feel that. Whenever we go and we talk to the ladies there, it's like such love. I love talking to humans in that way. We always kind of have this joyful approach wherever we are, and that's why people, when they see us, they're like already, oh, look at those two. They kind of remember us. They're so happy to see us because we engage with them in a joyful way. And people so crave this. And it's true, the world does need love, but the love in its truest sense. Not the love we're being sold, right? Buy this, oh, that's loving. Oh, have this romantic relationship, that's love. No, at its deepest sense, that love of all, of humanity, of all creation. That's what the world needs, because that's what we've forgotten the most, the roots. Our roots are from source, always of source. So, That is why in a way it feels different to what we've called this, just the vertical or in the cave or in the top of the mountain kind of enlightenment. It's different because it's less separated and excluded. It's more included, which means we're more inclusive in this world. That's why sometimes we're still feeling the feelings, and it's not always just blissful, but we maintain that. We are the pillar wherever we go. So it's more natural, more in service to the world. We deal with physical challenges as well, of the changing reality of the world in transition, just as anyone else. But we are not in, the new world as an exclusion, as a separate, but we are the new world. So this is the difference. We became the world. We're not just what the masters are teaching us about the self, having a relationship with the self, but you're bringing it in your form. You can engage with it. Everyone you meet, every experience you have, with everything. This means that the perfect conditions were seeded, we seeded them as to our Christ itself and our blossom within. So there are no perfect conditions on the outside anyway. So anywhere we are and wherever we go, that should not change due to the external conditions. The external acts as a generator that sets off our mastery and expands and deepens it. Depth is expansion. It's not just like this, it's like that. So from in to out and from far out in all directions it goes. Okay, number 12, enjoying life. That's very, very important, because when there's so much work and conscious engaging of creating that sacred space for mastery, a lot of the times we forget, wow, to play, to be like children. Whenever you read those books on self-mastery, they always explain that the most enlightened being is like, haha, it's always giggly, childlike, not childish, but childlike. So even when we perceive there is nothing out there for us, because sometimes we as the volunteer souls can feel, oh, this world has nothing to offer us. Look at how dense everything is. I can't have fun in this world. I can go out and dance without people smoking and drinking and that kind of thing. Yes, the world in many ways is still choosing as the biggest collective that. And you might feel as a more tinier fragment of that collective which chooses the new in a new way, and you form through that joy and through organic experience. But the thing is that when we feel that nothing infatuates us anymore, those are actually the trigger points that indicate we live too externally, and we're hoping for the outside to reflect us that which we are as our inner vortex, our inner world, our inner master, our inner creator, inner magic self, the inner magician. So we have to, in a way, turn to our own source of magic, and there will never be a perfect condition and setting. It might feel so at times and like have a glimpse of it, but this is because in certain moments we are in that climax, we're in that feeling and we feel it deeper and with more intensity. But in truth, it's because the inner magic at that point is activated and it's felt. And it's recognized in that moment, and the surrounding environment simply reflects that to us. So our mission in a way is to recognize those, see when we're in our magical self and when we're not, because the master self is the magician self as well. Number 13, last one, but I think it's the longest one. Oh yeah, sure. As if this video wasn't long enough already. Ooh, okay, headache. No, seriously. The last one is embracing all feelings. Okay. I've just recently seen this title from Jeff Foster. He's talking a lot about enlightenment as well, and he had to go through depression himself. He has a channel on YouTube, and I didn't see the video, I just saw the title, and the title was about the New Age myth of positive and negative feelings. And after that, I saw a comment on Facebook, about that being depressed and almost like making an apologetic note to others why they're no longer, the way people kind of perceive them to be. Because there's almost like this sense of guilt when you need to tend to the self. It's like, why is this? Because you still perceive yourself as separate from the rest. Like when you're tending to yourself, you're not tending to others. Why are you seeing it as separate anyway? When I see myself, I see the whole world. I see all my Ascension pioneers. But when I'm not tending to myself and someone's like, wants all my time and attention, it's like, am I really helping? Not really. Because the moment I lose my greatest sense of joy in being through myself first, I'm not really within that unity perspective, holding that light of purity and true awareness. So from the perspective that I was shown is that the new age illusion a lot of times of all this just love and light is just love and light, rather than radical authenticity and compassion for the human experience as well, and to embrace everything as a true road to self-mastery and illumination. Because of that, depression sometimes comes from that suppression. It's a result of that. And the other way, complete negation, would be fanatic expression. That's the other mode. When you only see just this light, you know, it can be just the downside. But it's not balanced. It's not harmonious. It's not integrated. So many feelings and people were ignored and stuffed down because of this belief that all is good and just light and love. You know, so in a way that's true, but not unless we truly feel it. Unless we on all levels can feel it. Yes, all it's love and light. When we feel out of alignment with that, we have to acknowledge that. We have to tend to that. We have to be truthful in that moment. That means true radical compassion for the human experience. And although and many times you perceive yourself as this infinitely expansive spirit, and you know, I had a lot of times that experience where my spirit was so on high, but my body was tired. And I had to have reverence for the human body as well. And I said, you know, as a human, I am also like this and like that. And that's also authentic in this experience, in this now moment. And that's the only moment I can have the experience of me anyway. Not projected just in the spirit form or whatever. It's the integrated self. So unless we truly feel it in all ways, that won't be truly true for us in that moment, in our embodiment. So if we just say it and not truly are feeling it on all levels, but then we kind of stuff it down, right? While also trying to save the world and help everyone else before we're genuinely helping ourselves, we eventually will come to that breaking point. And again, see, it's all about the breaking points. That we are depleted of our own source resources and we are numbed down. And that's what happens a lot of the times, and that's the main cause of depression and not being in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing through your own sovereign nature. Because happiness is a physical condition. It's not the same as a state of bliss. You can be in bliss just by feeling your spirit. But as a human, we also know a sense of being happy. You know, when I'm happy, when I have enough physical space as well, I can dance, I can have, you know, just move around. When I have a feeling I don't have that, I'm not always the happiest. And that's authentic too. To see the difference and to acknowledge both. Not just the spirit, but also we're now in this human experience. That's what we're transcending. That's what we're refining. We're not trying to make it better, but we want to make it more joyful, more higher in its vibration, more acknowledging of the eternal presence and the infinity of creation. So in truth, no one needs saving and rescuing. Usually people who do that are trying to save and rescue themselves. A master first needs to, and again, I'm coming at the perspective of our master soul, needs to take care of him or herself. People were trying too hard often to please. We all did that, all been there, done that, check. That's how we learned, actually, the boundaries of this human world and realm. So to change, to nurture before developing a genuine self-connection and relationship that's physical. So understanding and radical compassion that will now come out, and those who have the eyes to see and the hearts to feel, that are ready to feel, will turn back to the self in order to replenish, regenerate, and find truth within their own source of love, the ultimate unity consciousness. So it is not about living for love and light only, at our own expense often. We have to become that as an embodiment, and that often takes the integration of both polarities. The experience of sometimes two sides of the coin, and we need to embrace and address all parts. One example would be sending love to someone, right? I have to give this example because just recently I was contemplating that a lot. Let's say someone was mean to you, critical, was bullying you online, physically, doesn't matter, right? It's all the same thing. It's all the approach of lacking integrity and true love. And then you say, okay, I'm going to send them love. I'm going to wish them away. I'm just going to send them love, okay? I was really pondering on that because a lot of people say that, or they will tell you, you have this energy in your life because you yourself are bad, or because you attracted this, blah, blah, blah. No, no. Again, the law of attraction in truth is that you create the conditions that you require for your soul evolution, that you choose yourself on the master soul level, which sometimes your human self will not always recognize, but it's there. And what this means is that Sometimes you will have a negative experience, but it will have nothing to do with you and who you are. But it will have everything for you to do with boundaries, with respect and sovereignty. Being a true embodiment of that. So when someone is sending you that stuff, or criticism, or being really mean to you, condescending, opinionated, very drastic in those terms, does it really resonate? And ask this yourself in your heart. Don't let me tell you the answer, because that's not what I do. I do address our mastery as a collective, but in truth, for you and your personal alignment, you always have to choose. So does it resonate with you? Does it feel truthful and authentic in that moment for you to just send them light? For me, I'm going to give you my perspective. When I'm really being authentic in that moment, I see that person as they are. In that moment, although the spirit is always, we say, okay, spirit is always pure, blah, 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 okay? But we are now learning to have that purity in our human form. So when someone addresses you through the filters that are not really loving, they're not of love, and then you send them love, what we actually do is we're not, but what is it sending love? What love are you sending, right? Again, what level of love? Because as I said, love in its highest form is truth. And when you align with the essence of truth, you have to address all levels, includes the human in that person, and you seeing the master in yourself and others. So when you yourself are being that way, how do you treat yourself? You just say to yourself, oh, I'm just gonna send myself love, see it as, how would you treat yourself if you were condescending, if you were mean, or you were hurtful to another being? Or would you say, damn it, I have to start thinking, what is this? I have to start applying this. I have to get my integrity back. I have to work on that in a way of seeing it, recognizing, why is this happening anyway? You don't just send yourself love, like a wishful thinking, like a fairy stroking the wand. So I prefer being truthful and not sending love. I'm not guided to send someone love. Why? Is because, again, sending love is a perspective that love is something you can send. Love is an experience, and it has to be mutual. And if love as an experience is not shared on both ends, you yourself are one stream of love being sent a certain way. And if that someone is in that vibration, they're not even going to receive it. That's the thing. Source. Focus on the source truth. Source, existence, however you call it, the infinite existence of all, love, light, whatever you call it, doesn't matter. But it's prime light of unity. I call it unity consciousness. Already loves everyone, everything. You yourself are not obliged to separately send love or separately love someone. Just tune into the resonance of the divine, of all that already is all loving and all compassionate. But it comes through you. You are the individuum of it. You see, you are the extension of that source. So if you are not in that moment choosing to love yourself, which is withdraw and remove yourself from these conditions, you're only going to be following the notes of, okay, slapped on the cheek, allow the other one to be slapped as well. That was not really the message of that. It was to turn away, not through negating it, addressing it. Say, that was really mean. Hey, and not doing it from ego, like, oh, I'm not going to send a person love because they were mean to me. You don't have to not love them in that way, but just be in the truth. Someone who speaks to you that way, do they deserve to have a response from you? That's, send them love. It's not about deserving, because we're all deserving. But from you, what would be your authentic reaction to it? That's my main point here, because a master acts authentically. And as Saint Germain said, through Jeffrey Hoppe, you're not going to be kind and polite. You're going to be radically you. And I fully resonate with that. I'm all 100% behind it, because it's truth. It's how it is. Because the moment when we already thinking of our actions, should I do this? Should I send in love? Should I write this? It's already mental. It's already thinking engaged. It's not that spontaneous, which just feels with all of your being. Send that, because that message doesn't have to be a physical message to the other. It can just be an energetic vibration you're sending out, has to be from truth. And the truth is, you violated my space. Send that out. You disrespected me. Send that out. You were not in integrity with me. Send that out. Because when you do that, you address the truth in this moment, as it comes to our human experience. And sometimes, again, it would be that mothering. Let's just not just put a little like this. Let's just cover the surface. No, we have to be truthful. because the things that are being mistreated on this planet have to be addressed, not from the space of saving it, but just addressed. Let's just look at things how they are, and at the same time knowing that love will act through us as we address them. Again, it's a paradox. So the responsibility has to come back to the one who engages in actions that are less than of that source love. So when someone is being demeaning and hurtful, the responsibility will come through you vibrating with that authentic light. In that moment, you don't want to send someone who is mean to your love in that kind of human way. You know, sometimes people will tell you, I love you, but you will feel more like, they just want to be in your space. You don't feel the same way. Don't feel it. Don't force yourself in any kind of feeling. When it's the real deal, you will feel it, period. No trying to force our feelings to be a certain way. That is false. Because you cannot grow in your authentic light. You can't be a sovereign unless you master and practice that. So in truth, there is responsibility for our actions, and it has to come back to the source of where it came from. But you will not do that by saying, I'm going to send them love. Well, perhaps they will never get a message of what they've done as their human self. If ever, you know, it's like when a child, if a child, I don't know, hit a squirrel or something, I don't know, and a mommy said, oh, it's okay, just sending you love, the child would say, ooh, so whenever I kill a squirrel or something like that, I get pet and I get a reward. Obviously that's good, and continues to do that. You see my point? I know it's a bad example. I couldn't think of anything else in that moment, okay? It's just, I just get this image of, you know, children sometimes learn through silly actions. You know, sometimes it's how they do things, and sometimes parents act this way and sometimes the other way. But remember, we're not parents of anyone. We're not parenting anyone. We're simply being as our master sovereign self. That was the first point, right? No parenting, no mothering, no smothering. Mothering, smothering. It's just treating as we would like to be treated. You know, and if I was mean, I wouldn't like someone to tell me, oh, I love you. Oh, I'm sending you love. I would like to hear the truth. Hey, you were mean to me. I would say thank you. Thank you for exposing that. You know, that's how I see it. Turn it back to you and act from that engaged sovereignty. So the responsibility has to come out, and in just sending good vibes or whatever, we're not always truthful, and someone will perhaps never learn through that. You know, perhaps you're not obliged to do that for a complete stranger if you're not feeling it, but maybe it happens in your close circle and you will be initiated into doing that and sharing your truth. So we keep them in the illusion that it's okay to treat us this way, that it's okay to treat another, sorry for that, treat another human being like that. It keeps the pattern going. That's what I'm feeling. So is that truly love? It's not. Love is radical authenticity of what you feel in your deepest sense for you. People who will say, yeah, that's what I feel. That's my opinion about someone else. No, I'm not talking about opinions. You have no judgment over others, period. None whatsoever. You might have a perception of them, but your only experience with the other is through these actions. You know, we feed on each other. If someone was vile to you, in that moment, that's your experience with that person was they were this way. Don't define them as being this way. It was just a partial experience you've had, period. That's so simple. That's the most neutral kind of way of how we love, when we love through truth. So love has many faces and experiences, but love at its highest, most deepest, most profound, ultimate core is the truth. And as love of the truth prevails, love becomes the only law, the law of one. It's self-obvious and self-generating. So I also would like to end this point, which finally did end, leaves us to these few questions I've written down for us to not answer mentally, but feel into, okay? First, who do you wish to be in this new year and beyond, of course? What do you wish to become and embody? How do your choices reflect that? Do you live your sovereign in integrity? It's always main things that a master self from the self needs to address. So this is not about me preaching or teaching. This is just the pursuit of the embodiment of truth and becoming the living love embodied. So that's it for now. As I've shared, the Ascension update will come a bit late because of the Mercury retrograde and because this video already shared so much. I engage you to also be within conscious stillness within yourself to see what else that really wants to be embraced within your sovereignty comes up during this time. As you know, love is not always how it is perceived. Love for me, as I've shared, is the truth. And if you perceive someone as a certain way, direct that to you, direct back to you. Do you still have perceptions of the self through the other, by not judging and making them appear a certain way? And you know that perhaps I don't have the time to be with every one of you physically or to answer all of your emails and questions, but that I always am here and that my purpose is to serve the group. So that's why I like to come through with the messages that are shared for all, because I lose a lot of time, just each and every email. So I'm sorry, please forgive me if I haven't been everything you wanted to be. It was never my job, it was never my purpose, and it was never yours. It was to walk with your master. It was my only intention, is to make you dissolve those untruths, to melt into what is true for you. So I wish you such a beautiful 2017, the start of this year. Remember that it's always about the moment. The more you're going to be present, the more you will feel. The more you will feel, the more you will engage consciously with this world, your own experience of it, the more you will experience, the more freedom you will experience. So much love, wisdom, and power in this new year to come. If anything comes later, I will always let you know. If you're guided, there's still lots of material you can take during this time of intense retrospection. All my courses are always there. They're always available because they are not bound to any kind of laws of time. They're timeless in nature. So thank you so much for sharing your sacred space with me, going through these initiations together. As this year in a way was a year of completion, what awaits us now is a year of initiation. One is always the initiation of new things and new beginnings. So as you go through your own new year, this new moon, Sylvester's, how we call it, the New Year's Day, have that focus. What you really wish to, as I've asked through these questions, bring through your own mastery presence, because that's the biggest gift you give to yourself in the world. And if you are ready, you will resonate with the words, but not the words themselves, but the energy behind it, the energy of truth, the essence of truth. I love you all so very much. Take care, and I'll see you in 2017. Bye-bye. And don't forget to make a wish. Woo! From your heart, from your being. Beautiful. What are you wishing for? Tell me. Send me your feedback. World peace. Your mastery. Love. I'm so excited.